So today's video is going to be some tips on how to train your deadlift if you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner. And I say that because in jiu-jitsu, you guys might know this, we have a lot of problems with our upper back rounding, our shoulders wanting to round forward, and then a lot of times in jiu-jitsu people complain about low back issues. And I'm doing this video because I've gotten a lot of messages from people who are doing the lockdown thing, having the quarantine stuff hit them, and they want to do jiu-jitsu but they can't, so instead they're taking that physical energy and putting it towards weight training. Now a lot of people have found the deadlift when they're searching up like best exercises, and obviously the deadlift is one of them for good reason. But they say, a lot of the people that are sending me these messages say that when they try to do the deadlift, their lower back ends up hurting, right? And they want to do the exercise, but for whatever reason, the lower back is just killing them. And typically, that means usually one of two things. Either your lower back is shot and you have some really bad problems, but more often than not, what the case is it's usually a situation where the form's bad, the setup's off, and basically you're creating this unnecessary pressure on your lower back. Because if you do the deadlift correctly, you're going to use a lot of your legs, your glutes, everything else, as well as your lower back. And if you do get a feeling in your lower back, it should be more of like a muscle pump, or you feel that muscle being worked rather than sheer pain. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through some tips on how to get your deadlift into a better shape. You're going to see that when I show you guys some sort of my form tips and everything else, that I still sort of suffer from some of the jiu-jitsu rounding. It's just kind of what's going to happen after 20 years of doing grappling. But one thing I'll say about the deadlift is if you do it properly, it can be incredibly helpful to sort of fight against some of the bad stuff that jiu-jitsu does to our back and our upper shoulders and everything else. And so with that said, let's jump into the tips. I'm going to start by showing you what a lot of people's deadlift looks like, at least when they first start doing weight training in here, and then I'll give you some tips on how to fix that. So guys, really where a lot of people mess up initially, and we've had a lot of guys come into the gym who say like they've deadlifted before, they've worked out before, and then they'll train over here with Joe, and Joe will start critiquing them and fixing some stuff. And the most common thing that we see when people go for the deadlift is they'll come in, they'll get their setup here, right? And when they come down, they don't, first off, they don't set their back at all. They just kind of let their shoulders round, which again, if you ever watch people in jiu-jitsu and you look at their shoulders, they naturally round forward from all the pulling and squeezing and everything else. And then when they go down, they come down. And this is about what their setup looks like. Now, my back is probably rounded like crazy. And if I pull from here, I'm definitely going to put some strain on my lower back. It's not going to feel too good, right? The thing about it is when you do a deadlift, your body needs to be in a really strong situation, right? It needs to be in a strong position. You don't want to be relaxed. So like when you're doing the deadlift, it's like I tell people when they do a submission. When you're doing a submission, it's a whole body movement against that person's appendage. So if you're doing an arm bar, it's not you pulling on the arm, it's your whole body coiled up around that arm. Everything should be worked. Same thing with the deadlift. When you go into the deadlift, there's really no part of your body that's not turned on. And that takes a little bit of time to get used to. One of the things that was really helpful to me to sort of help fix my back at least a little bit is, first off, when we come up to the bar, I'm going to put my foot about the bar right about middle of my foot. I'll turn my toes out slightly. Now when I come down, I'm not going to just do it relaxed. I'm going to lock my back up right here before I even go down, because this is the problem, right? We do so much of this that this is what we want to do. We've got to fight against that, and so I'm going to flex my triceps and push my arms against my lats, right? Now from there, small bend, and then we're going to hinge at the hips here. Now when I come down, it's not really the easiest thing to get down there for me, at least, because I'm still tight in the hips and still have a tight lower back. But we're going to come down, and then once we get around the bar, we stay tight. And then when I go down, this is a thing too. When you're going down, especially in the beginning, work on keeping that back tight. So you notice when I'm going down, I'm not just bang, bang, bang. I'm locking out and going down. And in the beginning, I would tell people to do lighter weight than heavier weight because of that fact, right? We don't necessarily need to train everything else in the beginning. What we need to do is get this thing up here, the upper back muscles locked up, and get those suckers tight and strong. This way we can load more weight on it safely without messing up your back. Now, let's say for instance, if you cannot do that, then I'm going to give you another tip. Now, if you're lucky enough to have some blocks, I'll talk about what you can do if you don't have blocks. But what you can do is if your back, like, the way going back to the deadlift that I just did, my idea on it is basically don't reach for the bar, like meet the bar down there, right? Come down and get it. Now you want to do the same thing here, but in this situation, what we're going to do is we're going to go off of a block, right? And this is more of a rack pull. but we're gonna lift it up off the ground a little bit. Now you can see that this thing has multiple sections, and so when I first started fixing my deadlift a bit, what I did is I took the top block off. I didn't need this one, but I'm just using it because it's here. But I would just use this little top block, which you could use in lieu of that. It's gonna be about the same, right? So you could just deadlift off the plate if you need to. Because again, right now, as we're going through this, if you're working your deadlift, you really don't want to load up a ton of weight. What you want to do is build good mechanics and good control. It's like doing your technique, right? In the beginning, you don't want to go super fast in the technique. You want to go nice and slow and smooth. Get the sucker like lined out perfectly, make sure your muscle memory is good, and later on you go fast, because you don't want to do a fast technique if it's slop. You don't want slop, right? Because every time you do a movement, you're programming your body to remember that. So getting into this one, same idea. The only difference is now we're not squatting down very far. So we're going to slight bend, and then we're going to hinge at the hip, right? Boom. Now we're going to get in, get our grips, lock everything out. And again, start off by setting your back, by locking out, getting those shoulders back, getting that back tight. It's almost like someone punches you in the stomach, coming down. Boom, now we're locked. Now from here, when we go up, boom. You should feel that your glutes and your hamstrings and all that stuff are doing the work. Now when we come down, hinge at the hips, and this is really, if you're gonna do it off the blocks, this is where you wanna spend the focus, or spend the most time on, is when you're going down, almost like an RDL. We wanna be really tight, really tight, really tight, really tight, boom, and then come down. And what that's gonna do is, that's gonna strengthen that muscle there. The muscles that are supporting our back when we're doing that, that's gonna help support it. Now, what we can do later on is, you can take off the block and then work on this one, and then progressively go until you're on the floor using the deadlift, okay? So again, those are some basic tips on it. Again, basic idea, guys, the one that was most helpful to me was, first off, making sure that when I deadlift, I don't try to reach for the bar. I lock the bar out, slight squat, hinge at the hip, and then come down until I can reach the bar, right? Staying tight. If for some reason I cannot do that, maybe you're tight in the legs, whatever, then come up off some blocks, a plate, whatever you have to lift off of, but raise the bar up just a little bit, and then progressively over the course of maybe 4 to 6 weeks, you can slowly lower that bar down till it's on the ground. But if you do that, if you really focus on it, and if you've got a phone, guys, right? Everybody's got their phone, right? You can put that sucker over there. Record yourself and see what your body looks like, because a lot of times there's a disconnect between the way that you may feel and the way it actually looks. And so what you want to do is you want to take a look at what your body looks like, make sure you get in sync with how you feel and what it looks like, and then once you've got that back locked up, then you just lower it down. And so that's some ideas for you guys to work on your deadlift. Hopefully that's helpful to you. Hopefully that'll help you guys do the deadlift without mess up your lower back. Again, if you still feel pain with your lower back, definitely consult a medical professional to take a look at it. But again, if you do this right, you should feel the bulk of the muscular of the muscles being used. It's going to be a lot of glutes, a lot of hamstrings, and some of the low back. But you should feel a good, like, muscular pump in the low back, not like sheer pain where it hurts a lot. So hopefully that's useful to you guys, and I'll talk to you guys next time.